Clogged gutters are easy to overlook, but they can quickly cause serious and costly damage to your home. Fortunately, there's an easier way to keep your gutters clean and avoid the hassle. With Leaf Filter, you can protect your home and say goodbye to cleaning gutters for good. I've realized that gutters are more complicated than they seem. It's not just about cleaning them out, it's about preventing long-term damage. That's why I chose Leaf Filter. With their permanent solution, I no longer worry about flooding, roof damage, or foundation issues. Leaf Filter uses patented technology to keep everything out except water. No holes or gaps, just reliable protection. Plus, every installation comes with a lifetime no-clogs guarantee. Protect your home and never clean out gutters again with Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system. Schedule your free inspection and take advantage of the Spring Spectacular Sale with up to 30% off your entire purchase at leaffilter.com/tune. That's a free estimate, free inspection, and 30% off at leaffilter.com/tune. See representative for warranty details.
Raise your hand if you want your nails to look perfect all the time. Me too. I'm Sarah Gibson-Tuttle from Olive & June, and this is exactly why we created the Mani System. We wanted to make it possible for everyone everywhere to give themselves a beautiful manicure at home. With our tools and our long-lasting polish, each manicure with our Mani System comes out to just $2. That's right, $2. No more $30, $40, $50 manis that you get at a salon and they take hours. Now you can paint your nails on your time and love them more than ever. And by the way, when people ask, who did your nails, where did you get them done? You're going to proudly say, I did them myself. Get 20% off your first Mani System with code DIYNail20 at oliveandjune.com/DIYNail20. That's code DIYNail20 for 20% off at oliveandjune.com/DIYNail20.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for episode 42 of The Murder in My Family. If you find that you enjoy this podcast, please take a minute to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast so that the show can continue to grow and reach new listeners. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @murderinmyfam or by searching for the Murder in My Family podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to support this show through a Patreon donation, it's always appreciated. And you can do so by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. Benefits of supporting the show on Patreon include early access to ad-free episodes of the show, plus bonus content not heard in regular episodes. Support may also include thank you cards, stickers, and more. If you prefer to, you can also support the show through a PayPal donation by visiting paypal.me/themurderinmyfamily. In each episode, I'll give shoutouts to any new supporters. In this episode, I'd like to thank Lacey Kearns, Amy Mallett, Jim Donaldson, Ernest Hamilton, and Aaron Newbold. And thank you to all the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. Thank you. And now on with the show.
I had a normal life. I had parents, sisters. I had a happy childhood. But like everybody else, I took that for granted. When I was 9 years old, I went to a friend's house for a sleepover for the weekend. When her mom took me back home, there were cop cars everywhere. My friend's mom told me my family was murdered.
My name is Jamie Collins, and Jesse is my cousin. On the day of our family's funeral, I found myself seated in a little white church in Lakeville, Indiana. It was on our family's darkest day.
They were all gone, and here I was, alone. Death seemed like it would be a way out of all the suffering. I would spend the next 29 years fighting, crawling, and clawing my way out of the darkness.
When I first sat down to write this story, I had no way to know what would ultimately transpire. I was the first person that Jessie had ever told her story to. Every time I thought I found the bottom layer of trauma, there was always more.
I'll never be able to escape it.
Jessie was only 9 years old, and this trauma would linger over her for the rest of her life.
I felt like I was trapped in an emotional prison.
We wrote this book to give Jessie a voice. We wrote this to help other people out of the darkness. This is a story of hope and survival of the human spirit.
It is a story of a broken little girl and a resilient woman that she would become.
After 29 years, it was finally time for her story to be told.
Each of us has a different story to tell. My name is Jessie, and this story is about me.
The audio that you just heard is from a promotion video for the book I Am Jessica, a survivor's powerful story of healing and hope. Jessica's heart-wrenching story is 3 decades in the making. The story begins in April 1989 in the town of Lakeville, Indiana, which had a population of less than 700 people at that time. Among the residents of that small town were the Pelley family. Reverend Bob Pelley and his wife Dawn headed up the family. The marriage was the second for both, as they had both suffered through the deaths of their original spouses. Bob had a 17-year-old son, Jeff, and a daughter, Jacqueline, from his first marriage, and Dawn had 3 daughters from hers, 9-year-old Jessica, who went by Jessie, 8-year-old Janelle, and 6-year-old Julene. But this new family wasn't a Brady Bunch episode. It was hard for the kids to all get used to new people, a new home, and new rules, especially after losing a parent. It was a shock to the system, especially for Dawn's girls. They found their new stepfather to be very strict, and things weren't always easy. And for 3 young girls, the idea of a new big brother took some getting used to. They immediately clashed with Jeff. He seemed cruel and pushy, and a bit mean-spirited. But the girls made the best of their situation and settled into their new lives the best they could. On Saturday, April 29th, 1989, the new family would be devastated by something unimaginable. Both Jacqueline and Jessie spent the night at friends' homes. The sleepover was a welcome escape for Jessie, because things around the Pelley home that weekend were especially tough. Jeff had gotten in trouble for attending prom parties, something his father didn't like, and the tension was noticeable. But Jessie was happy to leave it behind, if only overnight. On Sunday, April 30th, Reverend Pelley didn't show up for his church service. Concerned, some of the parishioners walked next door to the Pelley's home and knocked, but got no answer. The Pelley's cars were there, so they became even more concerned. The parishioners located a spare key that was hidden outside of the home and let themselves in. As they entered the home, it was quiet, and they knew something wasn't right. What they soon found solidified their feelings. At the top of the hallway stairs, they found the bloody body of Bob Pelley. He had been shot in the head with what would later be determined to be multiple blasts from a shotgun. The horrified parishioners searched the home looking for Dawn and her daughters, but they were nowhere to be found. As one scrambled to alert police, another continued to search the home, making his way down into the basement. That's where he found the bodies of Don, Jolene, and Janelle. As with Bob Pelley, all three had been shot in the heads with shotgun blast. The shocked parishioners left the home, barely able to speak about what they had found. When they were able to, word quickly spread through the congregation, and then through town, and the community was terrified. They wondered if some sort of dangerous killer had invaded their small, peaceful town. Police arrived at the Pelley home and went in to survey the scene and look for clues. 3 of the Pelley's kids were missing: Jeff, Jacqueline, and Jesse. Police were able to ascertain that the 2 girls had spent the night elsewhere. It took some searching, but they also caught up with Jeff. They learned that he too had slept away from home the night before, despite being told earlier that he couldn't go out. 9-year-old Jesse got the news from someone bluntly, coldly. It was almost matter of fact. Jacqueline and Jeff were older and could handle the news of the murders a bit easier. But for 9-year-old Jessie to find out that her mom and sisters were gone that way, it wasn't easy, and the realization set in for her that she was all alone. The aftermath of the murders was brutal for Jessie. She found herself understandably feeling sad and lonely. She initially went to live with her maternal grandfather, but didn't stay long. Her grandfather was older and thought that Jessie would be better off living with her aunt, who was younger and who had kids of her own for Jessie to play with. But that environment was tough for Jessie too, and after a few years, she began to show the signs you'd expect to see from a child who had experienced the tragedy in her life that Jessie had. Jessie ran away and then went into a series of foster homes. She tried to deal with her pain in ways that most people wouldn't understand, such as self-harm and cutting. The murders of her family had far-reaching and long-lasting effects. Early counseling for Jessie didn't help, and she would struggle for years to get healthy and deal with the grief she carried. Meanwhile, police were convinced that the Pelley family killer wasn't a stranger that wandered into their town, but was actually someone who lived in the Pelley home. They suspected that Jeff Pelley had murdered his family after becoming angry about being grounded after prom. He tried to tell police that his father had changed his mind and let him go out, but police didn't buy the story. The problem was, they didn't have physical evidence to prove he was the killer. Over the years, as police continued to build a case against Jeff Pelley, he went on with his life, eventually getting married and having kids of his own, even teaching Sunday school. But in August of 2002, 13 years after the murders, police moved in and arrested Jeff Pelley for the murders of his family, something he always denied being responsible for. Pelley went to trial in July of 2016. The case against him wasn't overly strong, and there was little in the way of evidence. The murder weapon, which police believe was Bob Pelley's own 20-gauge shotgun, was missing and was never located. Despite the lack of physical evidence, a parade of witnesses and a strong circumstantial case helped convince the jury that Jeff Pelley was guilty. He was convicted on 4 counts of murder and sentenced to 106 years in prison. Today, Jeff Pelley calls Indiana's Wabash Correctional Facility home. 3 decades have passed for Jessie, who's now an adult with a family of her own. It's been a rocky and difficult road for her. Getting healthy wasn't easy, and it's an ongoing process for her. One thing that she thought might help her and others would be to write a book about her experience and journey. She knew that somewhere, other people were hurting like she was, and if she could help them, it would be something positive to come out of all of this. Jessie reunited with her cousin Jamie, and through their new bond, they decided that Jamie would be the best person to help tell Jessie's story. Their joint effort resulted in the book, I Am Jessica, a survivor's powerful story of healing and hope. It was released 30 years to the day after the Pelley family murders. Jessie and Jamie joined me to discuss the book, and Jessie also opened up about her long and difficult journey. That conversation is coming up in just a moment. Hey listeners, how much money do you make? If the answer is not enough, how does the opportunity to start making $40,000 a year sound? Even better, what if I told you could double that to $80,000 in just a few years? If that's something that interests you, then you should check out Truck Driving Jobs. With the improved economy and high-demand commercial trucking industry, the need for truck drivers is definitely high. CDL.com makes it easy to get a commercial driving license and find the job that's right for your needs. Find opportunities in your town or over the road. On CDL.com, you can create a driver profile, access high-paying long-term and short-term trucking jobs, and apply to jobs in just minutes. It doesn't get any easier than CDL.com. With plenty of new jobs and schools around the country, get your trucking career started at CDL.com. Explore a truckload of jobs for the trucker in you. Once again, visit CDL.com. It could change your life. With me today are Jesse Taranjo and Jamie Collins. Thank you both for joining me to discuss this very sad case with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So you're both cousins. Growing up, were you close with each other?
We weren't. We were always kind of separated by distance, usually states apart, and I lived in Germany for about 7 years of my childhood. So we weren't really around one another all that often, and when we were both quiet, kind of shy girls, so we didn't talk or interact a lot, but we were around one another occasionally as children.
You know, when a lot of times when families live in two different areas or two different states or whatever, they don't get to see each other that often. But did you guys get to see each other at family reunions or family get-togethers or anything like that?
Not very often. Not really family reunions. I mean, we had only been around one another, I'm guessing, maybe like 2 to 3 times as kids, maybe 4.
So, and just, if you can, Jesse, so listeners can hear a little bit about your family dynamic. I take it that you and your mom and sisters went to live with Bob Pelley and his son Jeff after your mom married Bob. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. I was 5 going on 6, and we moved down to Florida with them. It was just a different dynamic. Jeff and I were very angry because we had both lost a parent. And so we were just angry. My 2 little sisters, I think they were just so young that it didn't really affect them like it did me, because I did a lot with my dad. And Jeff's sister Jackie was just very quiet. And so, yeah, the dynamics were definitely different. Jeff and I did not get along at all. And Bob and I didn't want a new dad. I didn't want any of that.
And how long were they married?
Well, Bob and my mom, from the time I was 6 years old until 9.
Okay, so about 3 years.
Yeah.
And did that relationship get better at all? Did it seem things got easier for you?
No, it actually got worse. Bob was an authoritarian, so he spanked a lot with a belt and then moved to a board with holes. My mom was not like that. She didn't like spanking us, so that was a little tough.
So he was very strict?
Yes, he was very strict. And me being who I was one of those children that were very active, never stopped talking, always all over the place, messing with my sister, just stuff like that.
Was he that way with, your sisters and Jeff, or was it just you, or was it sort of everyone?
My sisters really didn't do a whole lot of things with us, so it was mostly me and then Jeff, as we were both the ones that really acted out.
He would get upset with you guys, I take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, they're married for about 3 years. You said things didn't really get better. They sort of got worse. It was April of 1989 when you were 9 years old that, an awful, unthinkable tragedy struck your family. You were at a sleepover when your mom, Dawn, your stepfather, Bob, and your sisters, Janelle and Jolene, who were 8 and 6, were murdered. They were gunned down essentially in cold blood. How did you get that news?
Well, like you said, I was at a sleepover at a friend's house for the weekend. And Sunday, they were dropping me off to go to church. And we pulled up to the house, and there was crime scene tape around the house and a bunch of people in the church parking lot. And we pulled up, and then a police officer came up to my friend's mom's window and asked her to get out. And I watched her talk to him, and all of a sudden, I just saw tears rolling down her cheeks. And, you know, she came to my door and opened it, turned me around, and said, "Your whole family's gone."
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that.
Wow. And I that's something like that is terrible for even an adult to process. So, let alone a 9-year-old. How did you process it, or could you even process it at that age?
At that age, I really couldn't process it. I pretty much just cried. I really thought it, you know, when we pulled up, I thought it was something to do with my dog. So to hear that kind of news at 9 years old, yeah, there's no real way to process that.
I think kids around that age, 8, 9, somewhere in there, I think many of them know what death is, but I don't always think they fully grasp how final it is and how to accept it. Was that true for you?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that they were gone, but I didn't, it was like I wanted to wake up the next day and they would be there, but that never really happened.
And Jamie,
And I think the tragedy was compounded because her dad had died, you know, when she was 5 years old. So she had dealt with the death of a parent already before this even happened. So this was like her dad died and now she's losing everyone else. So it was even worse than just only that.
all in a span of what, 4 years or so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And Jamie, how soon, and how old were you at the time, by the way, Jamie?
I was 12 at the time that this happened,
So you
almost
were
13.
a little bit older. How did your family hear about it, and what was the reaction when you heard about it?
I lived with my dad, and I think one of my aunts probably, or maybe my grandma, had called him to tell him. And I just remember him, we were standing like in the middle part of our house by the stairs, and he was like, you know, I need to talk to you about something, and it's serious, it's bad news. And I just remember him saying that Dawn and her husband and Janelle and Jolene had been murdered, that they had been shot in their home. But he said that Jessica was away at a sleepover, so she's okay. And I just remember at that time as a kid thinking, thank God someone's okay. Like, they're not all gone. And I think that's what all of us thought when you heard the news, but you realize it's really kind of a selfish thing to think, because she was the 9-year-old who was left with no one and with nothing. Like, she would never again walk into the house she lived in. She would never again sleep in the bed in the bedroom where she slept with their sisters. So this was just, thank God for all of us she's still alive, but I don't think she felt that way at all at 9 years old.
And was your mom or dad, how were you cousins? Who was married to who?
Jesse's dad is my uncle, so my mom and her dad were siblings.
Okay. And did you have a large family to try and, you know, step in to help at that time in some way to try and ease the situation?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do have a large family. There were 8 siblings total, so there are a lot of aunts in the family. But I think at that time it was just, you know, because on my mom's side I went to stay with them, and they kept everybody from me, so it was hard for them to even reach out.
Yeah, and I'll say for the first 3 years, I think our family did try to reach out, but they weren't allowed to talk to her. They weren't allowed to see her. And at one point, our grandmother had fought for right to see her, but, you know, time passed, and they thought it was best for her to keep the past in the past, kind of a thing. So at that point, she had no idea that they wanted to see her or had reached out. So I think she felt very much cut off and alone. And whether that was the reality from their perspective doesn't really matter, because it's definitely what her perspective as a 9-year-old was. She didn't know.
So this was just additional fallout.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the people who would want to rally around you and love you and spend time with you and talk to you, they weren't allowed to be around. So it's just she was very much cut off for about 3 years from that other side of the family.
Now, early on, did the police ask you? I'm trying to imagine them how they talk to a 9-year-old that's just lost her family like this. Did they talk to you at all, Jesse, about the crimes or who might have done it or any of that kind of stuff?
They never directly asked me questions about the crime. They did ask me questions. I really couldn't tell you what they were because I don't really remember. But I don't remember them asking anything about, like, I never knew what had actually happened.
Yeah, and she never knew really how they even died or who they suspected or anything about evidence because that wasn't obviously healthy to tell a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how much they would want to share or could share with a 9-year-old. So how quickly did they think that Jeff might have been involved in it?
I think it was fairly early on, and I've extensively talked to one of the lead detectives recently, and it was fairly early on, but it wasn't like they wanted it to be him or were trying to make it him. It's just all of the facts and the evidence that they were seeing and hearing and watching all pointed to him. And people always ask what it was. It's so many things, and it was a lot of circumstantial evidence, but it always pointed at him, and it was his own words and behaviors and actions that I think affect them on him.
And I don't want to get too far ahead, but eventually he was arrested. But it took a long time. How many years did it take?
He was arrested in 2002.
So we're talking...
So 13.
Yeah.
13 years.
And do you know what took so long? Why they had a hard time making an arrest all that time?
Yeah, they had a ton of circumstantial evidence, but at the time of the murders, Jeff was 17 years old, and what they didn't have was the murder weapon, and they really wanted the murder weapon in order to bring the charges. So they really suspected it, but they were hoping to find the murder weapon, and they never did find it, even when they brought the charges in 2002. They brought a circumstantial case forward.
So there's nothing as far as like guns being missing from the home or anything like that?
There was. Jess, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, they said that there was no gun on the gun rack when they went in there. But when I left that Friday to go to the sleepover, I distinctly remember, because I went to talk to my mom in the bathroom, and you have to go through their room to get to that bathroom. And I remember the bow and the gun on the gun rack.
And it was above her parents' bed, so she, would have seen it as she was sitting there talking to her mom.
So it definitely stood out to you.
Yeah.
I know Jesse's probably too young to remember this, but before they made that arrest, was there some kind of atmosphere in town there that, hey, there's some kind of maniac running around that did this to this entire family? Were people scared? Were you able to find that out?
I think talking to the detectives even recently, people fall into 3 categories. They either think that Jeff did it, they think that Jeff didn't do it, or they never want to talk or hear or think about it ever again because it was just too painful of a thing.
Wow. And I can imagine that this must have been, big news in town, or probably statewide, nationwide at the time.
It was nationwide at the time.
Yeah, and I can imagine people being close to that, just being, frightened, wondering who did this.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a tragic murder, obviously, no matter who it happened to or where it happened to, but it was even worse, I think, that it happened in a parsonage next to the church, like in the minister's home where he lived next to the church, and it was a family and the little girls. I just think it was really a captivating story and incredibly tragic and horrible.
And Jesse, I can't even fathom the feeling of loss you must have had. Your immediate family is gone in the blink of an eye. Can you talk about how that felt to you at the time, if you can remember what you were feeling, what you were thinking after that happened?
Yeah, I mean, after it happened, I just felt very alone. I had just lost my sisters that I played with every day, did stuff with every day. You know, we slept in the same room, you know, and I had lost my mom. So, you know, after I lost my dad, there was a hole. And then after losing all of them, it was even bigger. Like, I didn't even know what to do.
That's a lot.
And I think in large part, she lost her identity, too, not just her family. She lost her identity of who she was and where she fit in the world. That was all gone.
After the murders, where did you go, Jesse? Who did you live with?
At first, I went to live with my grandfather on my mom's side. And I was only there a short time. I cried a lot. You know, they had no kids. They were older, so they thought it would be better fitting to go stay with one of my mom's sisters in Midland because they had kids, and they thought maybe if I was around kids, it might help. So I did go and stay with them.
And how long were you there for?
I was there till I was about 13, so about 3 years.
And then you moved after that?
Yeah, I actually ran away. Just the circumstances, you know, to me, weren't the best for me. So I did run away, and then I went to a foster home, and then another foster home, and I just moved around a lot.
So understandably, after something like this happening to a kid, it led to other problems for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I started cutting because the inner pain was so great that I didn't even know what to do with myself. Nobody could help me. I mean, they tried. You know, they thought they were doing best by me by keeping everybody from me, but it really hurt me. So I did start cutting to, you know, try to get rid of the internal pain. I was acting out. So, yeah, it really took a turn for me.
I think one of the other layers of trauma that she had is not only did she lose everyone and everything, but she had resentment because she never really liked her stepdad. She didn't really like Jeff. And she was mad her mom had married him, mad they had moved, mad that this, you know what I mean, that they were in that environment and that she had seen signs of Jeff not being kind to her or doing manipulative things or scaring her and bullying her. So to her, it was like obvious that he was bad or something could happen. And so I think she carried a lot of resentment toward her mom after this. And I think that that's difficult because she's already grieving and hurting and misses them, and she's angry. And it's just a lot, I think, for anyone really, but for a 9-year-old to try to process or to make sense of, especially with no real help.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. And did you get any kind of grief counseling or anything like that along the way?
They tried to have me go to someone when I was 11, and he did not work out. He kept trying to tell me, you know, because I would want to talk about my dad, and he was like, "You don't remember your dad?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. I remember fishing and hunting and, you know, doing a lot of stuff with him." And he just kept telling me, "No, you don't." So I just kind of shut down, and it was not helpful at all.
So he was trying to get you to go in a different direction and not let you talk about what you needed to talk about.
Yeah.
And you would think that...
And he had a sports psychology specialty, so I have no idea how they picked him. Like, she clearly needed somebody to specialize in, like, PTSD or loss like this in children, and that's so not what she got.
Yeah, it's not like one size fits all when it comes to that kind of counseling.
Mm-mm. And maybe if you had lost one parent, then put the past behind you and move forward works, but it doesn't work when you're supposed to put everything you've ever known behind you. I don't know how anyone could do that.
So you don't think that really helped too much at the time then?
No, it definitely did not.
And how were your teenagers for you? How tough were they once you started getting older? I know you mentioned cutting and things like that. Did you have other problems or other things that you think were a direct result of what happened?
Well, I kind of did a split when I was 13. I actually changed the way I looked. I got contacts, braces to fix my teeth, started changing my hair different colors, changed my name to Jessie instead of Jessica. And I didn't realize I did that till now, but at the time, Jessica was just a very sad and lonely girl, very angry, very, hated the world. And I just couldn't handle being her anymore. So, Jessie was very bubbly and outgoing and, fun to be around. So, it did start looking up for me, I guess you could say, but there were still underlying factors that came out. Like when I was angry, I would do things that a normal person wouldn't do. I'd kind of act like a kid in that area. So, but as I got older, it seemed like I was getting better in dealing with it.
And when you made that change, you mentioned, going from Jessica to Jessie, did you feel like that reinvented yourself a little bit and maybe made you feel a little bit better about things?
Yeah, I definitely did. That's, I think, what saved me, up until 3 years ago. I think that definitely had something to do with it. Me pretending none of this happened to me and just moving on like I was a brand new person.
We talked about it earlier. We talked about how Jeff was the person that did this and he did wind up getting arrested. How did that affect you when he was arrested? Was it a shock to you, or were you not surprised at all?
Well, when the detectives came to me, I literally thought this whole time that my stepdad had done it. So when they told me that there's no way it could have been him, my first thought was Jeff. So no, it didn't surprise me any, just because of how he was with me when I was a kid. But this whole time I thought it was his dad that did it. So that kind of surprised me that it wasn't him.
So you almost thought it was like a murder-suicide type of situation?
Yes.
Yeah. When Jeff was arrested, and I assume he had to go to court and go through that whole process, were you involved in any of the trial stuff or the court stuff or anything along those lines?
I did go to the trial, but I wasn't, actually in it. I wasn't there. I just went there to testify that the gun was on the rack.
And did being there open up any old wound for you?
Not at that time. I had distanced myself so much from this whole horrific tragedy that emotionally I was not connected to it anymore. So it really didn't affect me like it would a normal person, I guess.
So when he was sentenced and put in jail, did you, you mentioned moving on a little bit and you were trying to put it behind you. Did you completely slam the door on it and really try and move forward with your life after that?
I tried, yeah. At the trial, I tried to talk to him, tried to get him to look at me and just tell him that he, took my whole world from me. Because I do remember stuff like that. But, yeah, I did try to move on and just, he was put away where he should be. My mom and sister, had a little bit of justice,
Has he ever owned up to any of it or shown any kind of remorse or anything like that?
No, not at all. He didn't even look at me at the trial.
And has never owned up or anything to any of the crime?
No, he has a website pleading his innocence with pictures of her mother and little sisters on it.
Oh, jeez. So he's using the people that he's been convicted of killing as his defense.
Well, or as, feel sorry for me, it wasn't me.
Wow. It's almost as if he's a victim too.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. That's awful. And they say, the old saying, time heals all wounds, and I somehow doubt that can be true in a case like this, but, 30 years has passed essentially now. Has time helped at all, or is it still difficult after 30 years?
Well, I actually hit a point, like I said, about 3 years ago, and I had a family friend that died of cystic fibrosis. She was 23, and I started into a downward spiral. I haven't dealt with any death since my family died, so it kind of hit me hard. I couldn't go to the funeral. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I was angry. Like, I had emotions coming up that I had not felt in a very, and then my husband was in the hospital with blood clots in his lungs, and then it just got worse from there. So, after the week that I really don't remember, it scared me so bad that I put myself into a hospital. And after that, I did start seeking a therapist, and I did find one. And, after I started seeing him, I started getting the help I needed.
That's great that you've got that help, and too bad it didn't come earlier for you, when you were younger.
Right.
It would have helped you a lot along the way. And they mentioned a thing called survivor's remorse. Have you ever had anything like that?
I have. I didn't realize I had it until I went to therapy. But I just, I thought that if I would have been there, that I could have done something, or it would have been different and they would have still been here with me.
The reality was you may have been killed as well.
Yeah, and that's what he told me. You can't think like that, because you definitely would not have made it either.
And I think one of the things that made this harder for her is her sister, who was 8, was supposed to go to the sleepover with her. And at the last moment, her mom changed her mind and said she couldn't go. So it was like her knowing maybe if she had fought a little harder, or maybe if I would have begged her, that maybe she would have said yes, and she would have at least had Janelle with her. And because she said no, she had no one. And she really carried that with her.
So you felt maybe responsible a little bit somehow?
Yeah, in a way, I kind of did.
And angry about it.
Yeah, definitely angry about it.
That's, yeah, for someone to go through that as a kid and have all that stuff weighing on them for years and years, I can't imagine how that is. All these years later, you decided to come out with a memoir, a book. It's called I Am Jessica, A Survivor's Powerful Story of Healing and Hope. How did that come about, and what made you decide that now was the time to open up about what you had gone through?
Well, my cousin and I had been talking. She reached out to me, and, we'd been talking for about a year on Facebook, back and forth. And, just one night she said, well, do you think you could tell your story? Or you have a story, you should tell it. And I said, well, I don't think I could tell a stranger, my whole story. So she said, well, could you tell me? I was like, I probably could. So, she's like, well, we could do this. Just think about it and let me know. So we, hung up, and I texted her back very quickly, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. For me, I guess, because this whole time I've been closed mouth about it, didn't really talk about it, didn't really deal with it. And I think for me it was, maybe I could help someone. That's where the bottom line came in. Maybe I could help someone else that's going through what I'm going through.
Oh, that's pretty admirable, too. That's a good reason to write a book. And Jamie, had you ever written any books before?
I had not. I'd done quite a bit of writing. I had blogged for about 8 years. I run a popular paralegal blog, and then I have a personal blog, and I've written for just about pretty much every paralegal magazine out there, but a book is obviously a way bigger thing. So when she texted me and was like, let's do it, I remember being excited at first, like, okay, like, we're going to do it. Like, what an honor to do that and to honor her story and our family. But then it was like I had this knee-jerk reaction right behind that, and it was like, holy crap, like, I wonder if I can even write a book. So I remember texting her back and being like, I'm going to try to write one chapter tomorrow at lunch. Let me make sure that I think I can do this. Trying to pump the brakes a little bit because I just wasn't sure if I could do it. And the next day I work at a law firm, and during my lunch break, I wrote a chapter, which is toward the front of the book. It's the dates chapter, and she thought it was spot on. And so I knew somehow that I'd do it, that I could find a way to tell her story the way that we wanted to tell it, and to try to really give it life, and to make people almost feel like they're immersed in it, like they walk with her through her life and see the things she saw and feel the things she felt. And so it was really important for us, I think, to try to write it in a more creative, different way than probably what people are used to seeing when they think of a memoir or a book about true crime.
And what were some of the challenges of telling this story in a book?
Well, I mean, on the front end of it, you have to realize I'm not a lawyer, and there's a lot of legal issues, and I'm a paralegal, but it's not quite the same thing. And there were a lot of mental health issues also that kind of unfolded as we worked on the book, and I'm obviously not a therapist either, so it was a lot to take on. It was a big story, and when you're looking back across 30 years, you want to make sure you tell the important parts and show what you need to show, and so it was a lot to think about. Like, what do we need to show people? What do people need to know? Like, what would be important? And I remember there's a lot of things in the book where initially we would talk about it and be like, we're not putting that in the book. Like that self-harm, for instance, was not going to be in the book initially. And then it's like, we would move a little bit past it and she'd be like, this is so important. Like, this could help people. This is totally going in the book. And it was like, that happened multiple times with different themes that are now all in the book, because I think she and I both just knew at one point, I was like, this is so much bigger than even just your story or just our family story. Like, you are going to help so many people by saying these dark truths that no one really fully shares the way that I feel that we did in this book. And it's very, I guess, like real and raw and authentic. And so I think people can connect to it in a way where maybe they don't if it's more academic or kind of swept over the top or kind of sanitized version of what PTSD or, you know, trauma and the issues from it look like. I think she was so brutally honest, and we just told it like it was.
So it sounds like it was very genuine.
Very genuine.
Yeah,
and every decision we made was always, is this authentic? Like, is it authentic to her story? And is it authentic for me as a writer to say it that way? And if the answer was yes, then we did it. And I'm really proud of what we did. Like, I'm incredibly proud of what we did.
Yes, I am too.
That's good. And looking back now, has writing the book helped you in your healing process at all, Jessie?
It definitely has. It's actually connected me to my childhood self, I guess you could say, where I had pushed her down so far that I didn't feel like she was there anymore. So I actually do have a lot of emotions that come up. I cry more at movies when people talk. I like feel the emotions again. So it has helped me in a way. You know, for a little while there, it was a little bit scary because it did bring up things. But, you know, with the help I was getting, I got through it. And I'm in a really good place right now.
One of the interesting things when we would talk about her, when we first started writing the book, and I'd be like, okay, let's talk about you as a child. It's like anytime we talked about her childhood self, Jessica, she would automatically, her tone would shift and she would talk about herself in third person. Like, she knew it was her and I knew it was her, but she would just comfortably talk about herself in third person. Like, she was sad that she's talking about herself as a child. And so it was like a palpable thing for me when we would talk about it, she would shift and the tone would change. And it was just like, I couldn't quite in the beginning put my finger on why, but she had completely emotionally separated from her childhood self. Like, the emotions and thoughts and feelings were not a part of her anymore, which is good and bad. I mean, it did save her. I totally believe it saved her, but you can only carry it for so long before a trigger hits you, and then it's a problem.
Oh, and it's very honest putting all of that stuff out there in the book. What are some of the things that you both would like readers to take away from the book?
Well, some things I want them to take away is no matter how bad the trauma is or how little they think it is, it can affect you and it will affect you. You know, I just want people to know, don't push it down. Don't pretend it's not happening. Deal with it head on. Get help if you need help. You know, don't be ashamed. It's you know, because it's a common feeling. People don't want to get help. But, you know, for me, it saved my life. So I think if people realize it doesn't matter what anybody else says or thinks, you know, just get the help that you need.
Yeah, and I think for me it would just be no matter where someone finds themselves or what's happened to them or how big or small it is, if it feels big, that there's hope. Like, there is hope. Like, there is a way out of that darkness that they feel or that hopelessness that they feel. And I think we all share the same universal truths, and I think that's a lot of what's in the book that people are connecting to. And we have people walk up to us at book signings regularly, and they don't even introduce themselves or say anything about anything. They just walk straight up to the table and tell us their deepest truths, things that you wouldn't even tell your best friend or your family member. And it's so cool and such an honor for us to be able to like hold a space for people who need it held for them. And maybe your whole family wasn't murdered. Maybe your mom died, or maybe your sister has cancer, or maybe you're just depressed because you are, but it's all universal truths, and grief is grief, and problems are problems. And I think we all just have so much more in common than we realize. And it just feels really good to be sharing what we are and trying to help people through whatever it is that they're going through.
Wow. The book's really connected with people and struck a chord in a lot of the readers.
It really has.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Wow, that's great. I'm always, impressed by people that go through something so terrible and then somehow rebound to use what they went through to help someone else. That's very admirable in my book.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I think she's shining a light from the darkest of places. She really is.
Wow, that's tremendous.
Thank you.
If people want to read the book and read more about what happened to you and what you went through, where can they find the book?
It is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's listed at Walmart online and a few other retailers. And then we also have a Facebook page called I Am Jessica Book, and we'd love to connect to people, or if they want to reach out and message us or just follow kind of what we're doing. So we do have a lot of exciting projects coming up in the fall.
Well, we'll definitely link to some of those things in the show notes too, so people can find you guys.
That'd be awesome.
And before we close, I just wanted to ask you if you'd be open to sharing some of your happy, fond memories of your family before that day in April. Anything that you think back on that really stands out that makes you happy when you think of it, or any favorite moments?
Yeah, I mean, Sundays were always like big days for us. Obviously, my stepdad being a pastor, my mom would always get up and make a huge breakfast. And, that was like a big thing for us, Sundays. My sisters and I used to play all the time out back in the woods in the cornfields, ride our bikes, and used to sing together all the time. So, those are some happy memories that I do have.
And it's good that after all the bad stuff you went through, that you still have those good memories back too.
Yes, definitely.
Well, Jesse and Jamie, I can't thank you enough for sitting down to discuss this tragic thing that happened to you and how you got through it. And I hope that people will go out and check out the book and the writing that you did. Hopefully it helps other people that are going through similar types of situations.
We hope so. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. If you enjoyed this episode, please introduce a friend of the podcast and invite them to listen. As we wrap up this episode, I'd like to invite you to listen to a preview of a true crime podcast that I think you'll really enjoy. It's called Devil We Know, so be sure to check it out. And before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.
The neighborhood is unsafe, the streets unlit. While others sleep soundly, you lie awake because you know the truth. You know that, no matter where you go, there's always a chance that a monster is in your midst. The darkness that runs deep within our own veins, the evil found in even the sweetest of souls, sometimes comes to light. And when it does, the result is a person that takes on that evil, that wears it proudly, and becomes part of the darkness itself. I am Aaron from Devil We Know podcast. And on our true crime show, we dive into the scariest corners of our past and present to reveal the devil we know. A father, a mother, a brother, a sister, and anyone, anywhere who hides in plain sight, living a life of bloody secrets while living just next door. Come check us out and hear the chilling, true stories about the devils we know.